called the column Bush and the Monkey Wrench Guy, or One Man's Bid to Aid the Environment. Tim DeChristopher is an economics student at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. He just had finished his final exam before winter break. One of the exam questions was, if the oil and gas companies are the only ones who bid on public lands, are the true costs of oil and gas exploitation reflected in the prices paid? Tim was inspired. He finished his exam, threw on his red parka, and went off to the controversial Bureau of Land Management land auction that the Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance called the Bush administration's last great gift to the oil and gas industry. Instead of joining, though, the protest outside, he registered as a bidder. He saw inside they were not bonding the bidders, so he picked up paddle number 70, and he started bidding. He bought 22,000 acres of public land. That is, he successfully bid on the public properties located near the Arches and Canyonlands National Parks and Dinosaur National Monument and other pristine areas. The price tag more than $1.8 million, which he did not happen to have in his wallet. And even the lands he was not able to capture, to buy, that the oil and gas companies outbid him, because he bid, he pushed up the prices for that. Well, he came on Democracy Now!, the only show he would agree to go on right afterwards. This was a totally spontaneous action. And he said, once I started buying up every parcel, they understood pretty clearly what was going on. They stopped the auction. Some federal agents came in and took me out. I don't mean literally. I guess there was a lot of chaos, and they didn't really know how to proceed at that point. Well, Patrick Shea, a former BLM director, Bureau of Land Management director, is now representing Tim DeChristopher. He's his lawyer. Shea told the Deseret News, what Tim did was in the best tradition of civil disobedience. He did this without causing any physical or material harm. His purpose was to draw attention to the illegitimacy and immorality of the process. There's a long tradition of disrupting land development in Utah. In his memoir, Desert Solitaire, Edward Abbey, the writer and activist, wrote, "Wilderness, the word itself is music. We scarcely know what we mean by the term, though the sound of it draws all whose nerves and emotions have not yet been irreparably stunned, deadened, numbed by the caterwauling of commerce, the sweating scramble for profit and domination." Abbey's novel, The Monkey Wrench Gang, inspired a generation of environmental activists to take direct action, disrupting so-called development. As the Salt Lake Tribune reported on Tim DeChristopher, they wrote, "He didn't pour sugar into a bulldozer's gas tank. He didn't spike a tree or set a billboard on fire. But wielding only a bidder's paddle, a University of Utah student just as surely monkey-wrenched a federal oil and gas lease sale Friday, ensuring that thousands of acres near 2 southern Utah national parks won't be open to drilling anytime soon." So now let me give you an update on Tim DeChristopher. He was arrested during the Bush administration for what he did. It was the last month of the Bush administration. Then the new Interior Secretary, the former senator from Colorado, Ken Salazar, took office, and he suspended the auction of this land. Tim had saved the land, put it off enough by disqualifying this auction to prevent the land from being actually sold. And that's a very good thing. But under the Bush administration, Tim has been charged with several felonies for what he did. And he's just going to trial now. And just as I came here to book passage, I got an email that said his defense that he was going to use of dealing with global warming to save the public lands, to stop the drilling for gas and oil, has been thrown out by a court. They will not let him bring, for example, Jim Hansen to the stand, the head of the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies, one of the greatest global warming scientists alive. They will not let him use these defenses, which means when he goes on the stand, they can just say he committed a fraud. He bought land where he didn't have the money. Now, his lawyer, Patrick Shea, who used to be the Bureau of Land Management, is saying there are a lot of people who bid who can't end up paying for the land that they bid for, even if you take it all out of politics. So we will see what happens, and we will follow through on this monkey wrench guy. But speaking of various creative actions, I couldn't end the talk without talking about a remarkable artist-activist team known as the Yes Men. How many of you are familiar with their antics? Well, several weeks ago, the activist artist group the Yes Men staged another of its hoaxes, with one member posing as an official from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, leading what appeared to be a legitimate news conference and stating the Chamber's complete reversal on its historically adamant opposition to climate change legislation. You know who the Yes Men are. They stage elaborate hoaxes on global trade organizations, multinational corporations, and politicians. They satirically skewer corporate free trade, pro-business positions by acting as genuine, sincere spokesjerks for those institutions, often offering apologies for past corporate crimes or promoting absurd products with remarkably straight faces at industry conferences. So let's go back to a few of their actions, to December of 2004. Actually, as we come up on this December 3rd and 4th, we're coming on the 25th anniversary of the terrible gas leak at Bhopal. Well, 5 years ago, on the 20th anniversary of the Bhopal disaster, in which a Union Carbide plant gas leak killed thousands of people, Andrew Bickelbaum of the Yes Men, Andrew Bickelbaum and Mike Bonanno, appeared on BBC News posing as a representative of Dow Chemical, which bought Union Carbide, claiming Dow would finally take full responsibility for the accident. Now, just let me clarify what he did. They set up a website called Dow Ethics. Now, that should have immediately clued in the BBC that there was something wrong. But it wasn't that they contacted the BBC. The BBC contacted them and said, since it's the 20th anniversary of Bhopal, would you care to come on and represent Dow's position? And so Andy Bickelbaum, who lived in Paris, who couldn't afford a ticket to London, said, if, well, I could do the interview here. They set him up in a studio and they started the interview. What do you say about what happened 20 years ago with your corporation? And he said, we apologize. We profoundly apologize for what we did to the people of Bhopal, and so we are liquidating Union Carbide and giving the $12 billion in reparations to the people. Soon, on the screen was flashing breaking news, and the BBC anchor starts interrupting and saying, wait, I want to summarize again. You're saying that you're liquidating the company, giving all the money to the people of Bhopal, and you are actually apologizing. We are, sir. And the interview then ends after 5 minutes. And this is news around the world until, of course, Dow calls irate BBC and says, you have been hoaxed. And so the BBC, red-faced, has to get on the air and say, we were hoaxed, this is wrong. And the Yes Men did not skip a beat. They released a press release under Dow Ethics that said, we are very sorry that there is any confusion. We do not apologize to what we did to the people of Bhopal and will not reimburse them for their suffering. And that was picked up all over the world. That's just an example of some of the things they do. In 2007, the Yes Men addressed Canada's largest oil conference, posing as executives of ExxonMobil and the National Petroleum Council. They announced a plan to convert the corpses of the expected millions of victims of climate change into a fuel they called Vivoleum. They were ejected, after which one of the Yes Men told the press, while ExxonMobil continues to post record profits, they use their money to persuade governments to do nothing about climate change. This is a crime against humanity, they said. So now let's go back to the news conference just a few weeks ago at the National Press Club. Andy Bickelbaum read from a statement as the representative of the Chamber of Commerce. He said, we at the Chamber have tried to keep climate science from interfering with business. But without a stable climate, there will be no business. Well, Fox Business News started flashing breaking news. Breaking news. CNBC picked it up. Reuters, other world media outlets carried the story of the Chamber's surprise support for climate change legislation. During the news conference, an actual U.S. Chamber of Commerce employee entered, loudly declaring the event a fraud. Chamber have tried to keep climate science from interfering with business. But without a stable climate, there will be no business. Well, Fox Business News started flashing breaking news. Breaking news. CNBC picked it up. Reuters, other world media outlets carried the story of the Chamber's surprise support for climate change legislation. During the news conference, an actual U.S. Chamber of Commerce employee entered, loudly declaring the event a fraud. But, several major corporations have quit the Chamber because of its opposition to genuine climate change legislation, including Apple, Exelon, PG&E, and Levi Strauss. The U.S. Chamber's resistance to science-based climate policy is nothing new. The day after they held this news conference, we had them on Democracy Now! And we showed the news conference. You can go to our website, democracynow.org, and see it. And we had on an old PR news guy, an old PR executive from Canada named Jim Hogan, the author of Climate Cover-Up, The Crusade to Deny Global Warming. He said on Democracy